Here we have a SAT math question. Okay, let's go to the information. There is a cubic equation given over here. That is 5x cubed positive bx squared negative 720x equals to 0. In the given equation, b is a positive integer constant. Which value could be a solution to the equation? We have four answer choices for the solution of the given equation. Okay, now let's solve the given cubic equation. First, let me write the given cubic equation as this. That is 5x cubed positive bx squared negative 720x equals to 0. Okay, when I look at the expression on the left side of the given equation, I find that there is a greatest common divisor for all the three terms in this expression, that is x. So since x is the greatest common divisor for all the three terms in this expression, so we can factor x out. If x is factored out, I am getting 5x to the second power positive b times x and negative 720 equals to 0. Okay, now the product of these two quantities equals to 0. Either the first quantity x equals to 0 or the second quantity, that is 5x squared positive bx negative 720 equals to 0. Okay, now already I got the one of the solutions of the given cubic equation, that is x equals to 0, but I don't find 0 in any of the options. Okay, now we may have to solve this equation. So this is actually a quadratic equation. When I solve this quadratic equation, I may get two real solutions for this quadratic equation because its degree is 2. That is the largest exponent is 2. Okay, so now let's try to solve this quadratic equation by factoring. So when I try to solve a quadratic equation by factoring, what I need to do is I have to multiply the constant term by the coefficient of x square. So when I multiply this constant term negative 720 by the coefficient of x square 5, I am getting negative 3600. Okay, now what I need to do is I have to get two factors for this negative 3600, so that the product of the two factors over here must be equal to negative 3600, and the sum of the two factors must be equal to the coefficient of x in the quadratic equation over here. So here, what is the coefficient of x in this quadratic equation? That is positive b. And you have to be very careful in one thing. So the question says b is a positive integer constant. So the b is a positive integer constant, and there is a positive sign over here. So when a positive sign and a positive integer constant are multiplied, so this complete positive b is a positive value. So the coefficient of x has to be a positive value, that is positive b. Okay, now I have to get two factors for this negative 3600. How do I have to get two factors for negative 3600? For that, I consider option A. In option A, we have negative 14. That is a solution to the given equation. And also negative 14 is a solution to this quadratic equation. Okay, if negative 14 is a solution to this quadratic equation, then just change the sign of this solution negative 14. Then it will become positive 14. And multiply this positive 14 by the coefficient of x square 5. Then when I multiply this positive 14 by 5, I am getting 70. So that is positive 70. So positive 70 is one of the factors of this negative 3600. So then the other factor has to be a negative value. So because the constant over here it's a negative, so since the first factor is positive, the second factor has to be negative. So that when I multiply positive and negative, I'll be getting negative sign over here. Okay, to get the value of the other factor, what I need to do is I have to divide the 3600 by this 70. So when I divide, so I'm getting a decimal value, that is 51.428, and it keeps going. Okay, now, so when I multiply these two factors, I'll be getting negative 3600 because positive times negative is negative. When I multiply 70 and this decimal value, I'm getting 3600. When I add these two values, it must be equal to the coefficient of x, that is positive b, that means positive value. So when I add these two values, I'm getting a positive value. There is no doubt about that, because here the greater number is having positive sign, the smaller number is having negative sign. So when I add these two values, I'm getting a positive value, but it will not be an integer because it's a decimal value. So when I combine these two values, I'll be getting a positive number, but it will not be an integer, it will be a decimal. But according to the information we have in the question, b is a positive integer constant. That means the coefficient of x has to be a positive integer constant. So when I combine these two values, I mean when I add these two factors, I don't get a positive integer constant, I'm getting a positive decimal value. So the solution, I mean the value we have in option A does not work. So option A cannot be the answer. So we may have to try option B. Okay, let me reject option A. Okay, now I'm going to try option B. So if I try option B, that is negative 8 is a solution to this cubic equation, and also it is a solution to the quadratic equation over here. So now to get the first factor for this negative 3600, what I need to do is I have to change the sign of this solution negative 8. So if I change the sign, then I'll be getting positive 8. When I multiply this positive 8 and the quotient of x square 5, I'm getting 40. That is positive 40 is one of the factors of negative 3600. So since one of the factors is positive, the other factor has to be negative. So I've already said the reason, because when I multiply these two factors, it has to be equal to a negative value. So if the first factor is positive, the second factor must be negative. Okay, now to get the value of the second factor over here, I just have to divide this 3600 by this 40. So when I divide this 3600 by 40, I'm getting 90. So when I multiply positive 40 and negative 90, I'm getting negative 3600. So when I add these two values, I'm getting negative 50. So that must be the coefficient of x, but the coefficient of x has to be a positive value. So, but when I add these two factors, I'm getting negative 50. So the value we have in option B also does not work. So we can reject option B. Okay, now let's verify option C. That is 10 is a solution to this quadratic equation. So to get the first factor, what I need to do is I have to change the sign of this solution 10. Already it's positive 10. If I change the sign, it will become negative 10. So to get the first factor, as I said already, I have to multiply this negative 10 and the quotient of x square 5. So when I multiply negative 10 and 5, I'm getting negative 50. Okay, now to get the next factor, since the first factor is negative, the second factor has to be positive. So that negative times positive will become negative. Okay, now to get this value of the second factor, what I need to do is I have to divide 3600 by 50. So when I divide, so I'm getting 72. So when I multiply negative 50 and positive 72, I am getting negative 3600. And also when I add negative 50 and positive 72, I am getting a positive 22, which is a coefficient of x. So anyways, I am getting positive b equals to positive 22. That is, I am getting b is equal to positive 22. So it's a positive integer constant. It satisfies the condition given in the question. So when I try the value in option C, I am getting b is equal to positive 22, that is a positive integer constant. So since the condition given in the question is satisfied, so I'm pretty sure option C is the correct answer choice for this question. Anyways, we can try option D also. So right now we can decide, that is option C is correct. Okay, now we can verify option D. In option D, we have positive 14. So to get the first factor for the negative 3600, I have to change the sign. Then I'll be getting negative 14. So now I have to multiply this quotient of x square 5 and negative 14. I'm getting negative 70. Okay, now I got the first factor for negative 3600, that is negative 70. Then the second factor has to be positive. So to get the value of the second factor, I have to divide the 3600 by 70. So when I do so, I am getting 51.428. Already we got this value when I tried the first option. Okay, anyway, so when I add these two values, when I multiply these two values, I'm getting negative 3600. But when I add these two values, I'll be getting a negative value because a greater number is having negative sign. Moreover, when I add these two values, I won't be getting an integer. So because when I add these two values, it must be equal to the coefficient of x, that's a positive b. So it has to be a positive integer constant. But when I add these two values, I don't get a positive value. I'm getting a negative value, and also it is a decimal. So option D also is not working. So the correct answer choice for this question is option C. That is 10 could be a solution to the given equation.